Welcome. We're happy to have you all here. Okay, so Mike Mendenhall just called me and said he's in meetings in Provo and wanted me to introduce Susan. So Susan, come up and we'll do an introduction together. Okay. So I know you as a wonderful person who looks out for neighbors and the community. So that's my unofficial introduction. So tell us, you helped nominate the Strong family as a neighbor, and then you're on the Fit and Active Community Committee for the city.
Yep.
Is that correct?
Yep, that's correct.
Okay, and you're going to be speaking about both of those subjects today.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Tell us a little bit about you as you introduce yourself. Tell us about your family, about you, your what you do, where you've been. Okay.
I'll do that.
Great. We'll turn the time over to Susan.
All right. Just a little bit about me. I'm not really anybody special, and I want to really make that clear. But what is special about me is I have a lot of passions. And I've just kind of let those passions go, and I've let those kind of run my life in the last few years. And those, I feel like they have benefited the community and have benefited my neighbors and the people around me. And I'll talk a little bit about that in just a moment. But well, I always want to skip over more about myself, but I'll tell you more about myself. So I'm married. I have 5 boys. And my house is always chaos. And I have decided that I've become decibly challenged because of my boys, meaning that I'll be somewhere and I'll remember, oh, you know, I need to keep them under control, you know, because other people are around me now. And, you know, but it's fun. I don't think I would know what to do with a girl now at this point. If I had a girl, I think it would really throw me off because I'm used to boys. Boys are a lot of fun. But I got a master's degree in public health. And I was the public information officer for Utah County Health Department, and I loved it. My dad was a highway patrolman, and I grew up with a passion for traffic safety. And that's kind of a weird passion, right? I mean, who is passionate about traffic safety? And one reason why I was passionate about traffic safety is because it was the leading cause of death of our youth. Traffic fatalities was the leading cause of death of our youth. And if our youth made it through high school without dying in a traffic crash, then they would make it through high school, basically. That was what would happen. I decided that I was going to leave my career, which I loved, and I would stay home with my children. But in the span of about 5 years, I saw, as an epidemiologist, I saw those statistics change, and I saw that it flipped, and suddenly suicide was the leading cause of death of youth. And just to see a 1% change in the population is a big deal, but to see 141% change of climb and change in our youth was baffling. As somebody who knows statistics and as somebody who watches change in that that age group, that took me out of retirement. That took me out of my mommy homemaker retirement. And so I wrote a grant along with Mike Mendenhall, and then wrote another grant, and took that grant money and wrote a suicide prevention program for our city, and encompassed our city into a bubble, and have written a suicide prevention program for our city using best practice and evidence-based programs, which encompass not only our youth, but the demographics which are highest for suicide, which are men ages 35 plus and older men as well. So we do focus a lot on youth, but it's also our men that we need to talk about. So I'll talk about that in a second as well. But before we talk about the not fun stuff, which is kind of fun to talk about for me, but I want to talk about my neighbors, because you had a part in that. Mike Mendenhall came into one of these meetings and he said, we need help. We have this crazy person, Susan Chapman, who's passionate about a lot of stuff, and she needs help. She wrote a television show and said, hey, I've got these neighbors and they need a basement finished. And what I had is I have a neighbor who they adopt special needs children. And these children are very special needs in that they, a lot of them are blind, a lot of them are bound to their beds, wheelchair bound, and they have a total of 22 children. Not all of them are living at home. 10 of them are living at home at this time. But they had a lot of needs, and they didn't have access to their basement. A lot of them can't go outside. And, and as their neighbor, as their nosy neighbor who watches them every day, I saw their struggles. I saw them taking each child down their ramp and outside, and I saw the mother who couldn't leave home, and I saw them carrying these children on their backs and their arms. And day after day after day of watching them, I would just cry sometimes as I'd watch them out my window. And I nominated them for the BYU television show Random Acts, and just said, hey, there's this amazing family, and I would love to see them get a basement where they could actually go somewhere and have a little bit more room and more space, and that it would be handicap accessible. And then I forgot about it. And then the producer called me one day and said, hey, we're thinking about this. And I thought, really? And then he called me back and again. And it just so happened that this family, the mother and father, were in California. And so I was able to take the producer. I actually went over and cleaned and stuff before they came, just, because that's what I would want somebody to do, for me. But anyway, and we took them into their home and scouted it out to make sure, with the permission of some of the older siblings. And they said, yeah, this is the perfect thing. And so it was really it turned out to be really fun. We brought the dad in, so the dad knew about it, and the mom had no idea. And somebody wrote her a letter and said that she had the surprise getaway. And so they flew her out to California, and while she was gone, BYU TV came in and parked their RV at my house, and they redid the basement. Now, backing up, I don't know if you remember this part, you probably do, but BYU TV is it's a nonprofit. And so all the funds came from our community. It was about $60,000. And people like you donated to the cause. Neighbors, people with businesses in our community, they all chipped in to finish the basement of this family. And it was extraordinary. It was amazing. We didn't think we were going to do it, but in about 3 weeks' time, we were able to do it. And we appreciate everybody, each one of you there was painters, there was the chairlift, it was amazing how everything came together. And, I'm trying not to cry. But me and Mike were able to sit in the room when she came home. And it was really extraordinary to hear her voice from the other room. We didn't get to see it. We'll get to see it when it comes out on the show. But to hear her voice as she came down the stairs and she said, "Is this my house?" It was just really cute. And it was really amazing. And then the kids came downstairs, and, the ones that could run around did. And I remember the director, I don't think he'll see this, but I remember being a little intimidated of the BYU director. He'll probably laugh if he saw this. But the whole time I kind of avoided him because he would snap his fingers, or, he wouldn't really snap his fingers, but he would say something and everybody on the crew would do it. But I remember him watching the autistic son who is blind, and the autistic son, they put on a swing that they had made just for him. And I remember the director, just watching the director, who I thought was this kind of tough, scary guy. And he watched this autistic son and who got on this swing just for him. And the autistic son just folded his arms and he smiled and he nodded and he cuddled up in the swing that was just for him. And the director said, that's worth it right there. This is worth it. And everybody had a place. And it was just, they finally had a place to be, and they have loved that basement. The kids don't want to leave it. They just love it. They've actually had family parties there. Debbie is her name. She's able to host people that she would not normally host, not to give her more work, but she's able to do things there where normally she would have to be somewhere and then she would have to rush home and put the kids to bed and, and do different things, where she can do things now. And so it's just been an extraordinary thing. So thank you all. Thank you all for your help in this amazing family that does amazing things that normal people, wouldn't be able to do. So.
What's the date?
We don't know yet, but I know it's sometime in March. but they've started sending me pictures of people saying, who is this person? So I know that they're editing, in the editing process. And another guy who is part of Heart to Home, who works on the projects with them, he told me that BYU TV will email him 2 weeks in advance and say we're going to air it this time. I wouldn't be surprised if it was the finale, because it was such a good episode, but maybe that's just me thinking it's going to be a great episode, you know? This is going to be the best episode ever. But I think it will be well, it's obviously going to be March, but I wouldn't be surprised if it was at the end of March. So I'll let Mike know so that he can send out an email so that you can all watch it, because it's going to be fantastic. But so on to our suicide prevention program. The Active and Healthy grant that Mike and I wrote together, it has a lot of working parts. It encourages people to get active and healthy. We built exercise equipment, went towards it. We've been doing these health fairs that are awesome. We have a lot of participants. The first year we had about 600 people come. The second year we had well over 1,200 people come. And we have done a lot of things. Aaron sits on the Active and Healthy Committee as well with us. He comes to those meetings. We just do a lot of great things. And Pete as well sits on that committee. So I don't want to downplay the active and healthy part, but one thing that we do is also suicide prevention. And as I mentioned, this is a great concern. The statistics in the nation are about 15 per 100,000. In Spanish Fork, it's 25 per 100,000. In rural areas of Benjamin Lake Shore, it's 35. And so it's a lot higher. Rurality is a big deal. Anytime you have a rural population, it's a lot higher. And one reason for that is access to lethal means, barriers to care. And anytime I talk about access to lethal means and guns, we kind of get this political, feeling in the room. But one of the grants that I got was through the NRA, and they are the most supportive of this. And why do you think that the NRA or people who support guns would be supportive of suicide prevention grants? Any thoughts?
It gives them a bad name.
Yeah, it gives them a bad name, right? And there's nobody that's more passionate about gun safety than gun-savvy owners, right? And so some of these, you notice I'm going to pass around. I want everybody to take home a gun lock, even if you don't have guns. And so that, you don't absolutely have to. But this is a gun lock right here. So, and this is what it looks like. How in the world can this stop somebody from taking their life, this flimsy little thing? Any thoughts?
No. Can't figure it out.
That's good.
Yeah, for my sons that are just playing around and find the guns, then make sure that they can't manage to pull the trigger.
Yeah. That's a good one. Yeah, thoughts here.
Well, mechanically, it locks up the chamber, so the chamber can't close. And so it creates a barrier, so that it's impossible to fire the round. It's inoperable without a key. So obviously the key needs to be in a separate location.
Yeah,
Tape it to the gun.
Yeah, Pete, your thoughts? And
For those that are thinking about suicide, it's an extra step they have to go through. They have to logically find a key or whatever it might be and open the gun up. And that might be enough of a step to say, maybe I won't.
Thank you. Thank you.
So I understood that Utah was a free gun lock state. So I looked on the internet because part of my social history when I do a physical exam is asking about firearms and safety.
Okay.
And when I looked on the internet, the closest place I could find was in Salt Lake. Do we have a place to get gun locks here?
Yeah, we actually hand them out at the city office building. And I'm going to give these to the library. And I haven't talked to them yet, but I'm going to give them to the library.
Go to the police
Oh.
department, there's a box right there at the...
Okay, I didn't know that. Yeah. Yeah, so I distributed 500 last year. They have them at the gun club. And I've been handing them out at the QPR trainings. But yeah, we're supposed to have them. I was the one who got them last year and just kind of got them to everybody, but I didn't know that the police department had them, so that's good. But yeah, I didn't know that. I didn't know that part, so thank you for educating me on that. But yeah, so anytime that you want them, We have them at the city office building, and we have them, and I'm going to give them to the libraries. But you can get them in Salt Lake at the libraries, and I thought, why don't we have them at the libraries here? So, so what Pete said is an extra step, and it's interesting that it would take that. But when you look at the research on it, people usually do have a plan. You know, they've had their plan for a while, but they make their decision in 10 minutes. And if there is an extra step, or if there's something that impedes them that may take more minutes than they would like, then they can change their mind in that small amount of time. And even something that looks flimsy like this will help them to change their mind. So any barriers that we can put between them and that final act, and guns are lethal. The body fights. You know, drowning, pills, it has mechanisms that kick in that can stop it from dying. But a gun is almost always certain. And so a gun is the most lethal means. And so we talk about that in our trainings. But in our suicide prevention plan, we have 5 aspects. Access to lethal means, which I've kind of talked about. We have gatekeeper trainings. These are QPR trainings, and what we're doing is these are ways to help people to talk to others about suicide. One myth is that if you talk to somebody about suicide, that they're just going to go do it, that you put that in their mind and they're going to do it. And this is actually false. I mean, I won't ask for a raise of hands, but if I asked for a raise of hands and we were completely honest, probably some of us would think, oh, yeah, I actually think that, you know, or I've thought that in the past, because I thought that. I thought if I talked to somebody about suicide, I would put that seed in their head and they would go do it. But the truth is that if somebody's thinking about suicide, they've thought about it for a long time, or they've been thinking about it. But what happens is sometimes people get in a tunnel thought and they're thinking about suicide. And when you ask them about it, you edge them out of that tunnel thought. And they're able to consider other options. Because a lot of times, people don't want to die. What they're actually doing is they're trying to escape some sort of pain. And so when you talk to them about suicide, you help them to consider other options. And so what we do is we do a training called QPR. And just like CPR, it's an acronym. QPR is question, persuade, and refer. And we teach people how to appropriately talk about suicide so that they can get people so we can question them first, persuade them, and refer them to another health or to an expert. Just like CPR, if you saw somebody struggling on the ground and choking or dying of a heart attack, we wouldn't be the end. We would try to get them the basic steps to keep them alive and get them to another expert. We'd call 911 or whatever. Just like QPR, if we see somebody struggling mentally, we know certain steps to do in order to get them to a mental health therapist, or in order to get them to the right person to help them a little bit more. And so that's what these trainings are. But we're getting all the teachers and all the people trained in Nebo School District right now. And so we also do faith-based groups. We've been trying to train as many bishops, as many leaders, even average clergymen or whatever in all faiths that we can, trained in this, leaders, youth leaders, scout leaders, whatever, as possible. So if you want to talk to me about a training, you can. So there's a lot of different aspects of our suicide prevention plan, survivor support as well. Let's see. Does anybody have any questions as far as anything that you want to talk about? Yeah.
When will we get a 3-digit suicide help?
Oh, that's a great question. I know when will we get a 3-digit suicide helpline, crisis line? And I know that's something that keeps going through, or not keeps going through, but it's been going through legislation, and they're really working on it. One problem they're having is if they get a 3-digit suicide crisis line, people are going to use it. And so they want to be able to support it, And I'm hoping that they do, because we need it. A KSL article recently came out saying that we have over 100,000 students who are in need of mental health therapists. After we do our trainings, I get messages and I get parents who come up to me that say, I can't find a pediatric mental health therapist to save my kid's life. There's such a shortage right now. We need these resources, and that's another element of another 5th element of our prevention plan is reducing barriers to care. So, it's just one of those things that we're really, really working on. Anyway, so that's a great question. Yeah.
What about businesses like HR departments, training, what about that?
Yeah, so there's something called Working Minds. And we could do QPR. We've done QPR trainings and with businesses as well. But there's something even better called Working Minds, and it's done through Utah County Health Departments, where they will train, and it's free. And it's a 2-hour training. And they train HRs, and it's more based on a business level. So I can hook you up with the person if you would like to. Her name is Marla Branham. We actually did one through the city and advertised for it a bit.
Oh.
And so this year, but it's a great training. So remind me after, and I'll tell you. I'll give you her information. So, but I'm just going to end with a story, and it's his. Now there's a man, and it's funny because I can't walk away from this. Sorry. I'm used to walking around. But there's a man, and I introduced myself as saying there's nothing special about me, and I want to reiterate that, because there's nothing special about me. I just have some passions, right? There's also a man, his name was Don Ritchie, and there's nothing special about him. And I have to be careful when I say this, because I was at a training with a retired group, and I said he was an old man, and they all laughed at me because I used that term, yeah. But he was just an old man, and forgive me for using that term. I'm sure he wouldn't be offended either. He was just an older gentleman. Something that was special about him was he lived in a house by the sea, and the location of his house was very interesting because he lived by an edge of a cliff, and it was an edge of the cliff by, I want to say, in New Zealand. Where it was a very popular place, for lack of a better term, where people went to take their lives. And sometimes when he would be eating breakfast, he would notice people outside on the side of this cliff, and as he would look over, he would notice people there, and then he would look away, and he'd look back, and they'd be gone. And then he'd find out later that they would take their lives. So this really started to bother him. And he thought, I'm going to do something about it. So when he noticed certain characteristics about these people that they had in common, he would approach them, and he would say, my name's Don, what's your name? And he would begin to talk to them. And as he would talk to them, he'd learn things about them, and he'd say, why don't you come and come with me and my wife and have a cup of coffee, or come and have breakfast with me and my wife. And as he would do this, he ended up saving, according to record, 160 people who came back and said, Don Ritchie saved my life. Don Ritchie saved my life. I went there to take my life that day, and Don Ritchie saved my life. According to his family, it was well over 500. But we know on record 160 people came back. More people didn't come back, but 160 people came back. So there was one training where I was in where there was this mousy girl in the back, and she raised her hand and she said, who am I? Who am I to stop somebody? Who am I to be the person who speaks up? And I told her another story. It was a story of somebody who was walking the Golden Gate Bridge who decided that they were going to jump if nobody looked him in the eye. And nobody did look him in the eye that day, and he jumped, and he ended up to be a survivor. And he now shares his story of hope. And, it just took one. He talked about how it just takes one person who's interested. It takes one person to learn how to just ask a question, or not learn how to ask a question, just to be interested, and to reach out, and to just, we as business people, we can take this problem. We don't have to be experts. We don't have to know much. And there are those cases in the past, and if we've had cases in the past that we didn't know what to do, or they just happened anyway, no matter what we did, we can still look forward to the future. Some of our strongest trainers are people who've had experiences, and now they look forward. There is hope in this problem. We can address it. We can hit it head on, and our statistics are going down in the city, if you can believe that. We got the new statistics out, and they're going down. So we haven't updated them yet. We're doing good things. So there is a lot of hope. We can go forward. So who am I? I'm nobody. Who was Don Ritchie? He was nobody. Who are you? You're somebody. You're somebody who can look people in the eye. You may not see a sea out your front door, but you may see a sea of faces each day at work. You may go to a lunchroom and you may see people. You may board a bus, or you may get on a freeway, who knows? But in your sphere of influences, there probably is somebody who's in need of help. And I just encourage you to learn how to look for signs, learn the warning signs, learn how to ask a question, learn how to talk to family members, learn that mental illness is not a disease that cannot be conquered. It's something that we can all learn more about. So thank you for your time and letting me come and talk to you today. All right, thank you.